So I'm here with Professor Helbing here today, just saying a few words about the background of the Climate City Cup and how it all started. I'm representing FuturICT 2.0. It's a European initiative that tries to foster distributed incentive mechanisms for sustainable behavior. And with that, we thought that we need an additional pillar to the classic pillar of top-down state orders, and also to the pillar of voluntary contributions of big companies all around the world that try to help us become more sustainable as human beings. But we said we need another pillar, and this pillar is that individual actions count, and that we also make it clear to people that they did something and that they will get an immediate feedback for what they've been doing. And with that, we experiment a lot with giving tokens to people that are carrying out positive actions, which we call the Finance 4.0 system. We said with this system, we need to reach a lot of people around the world, and one option to do that is in a gamified way to engage people in becoming more sustainable and contributing on an individual level, but also on a collective level. What can we achieve if we put together a great number of people that want to do something jointly that benefits our world, our environment, our society? We organized 2 workshops back in 2018 together with our partners at the Complexity Science Hub in Vienna. And in these workshops, we achieved together a great group of supporters that are willing to work with us on the Climate City Cup. Among them, the ICLEI initiative, which is like the largest initiative of city governments around the world for sustainability. But also we got some support from the UN, FCCC, Open Geneva, GLOCHA, and a few others. In India, we're very grateful for the great support of the Swiss Embassy that is organizing this event, but also SwissNext in Bangalore that has given us a lot of support when organizing the first Climate City Cup. And a big thank you also to Joe's, who's organizing the TIA Summit and the FuturICT Summit in Bangalore. He has been able to give us some great opportunities to make the Climate City Cup more well known. And the official launch of the Climate City Cup is going to happen actually in Bangalore on Thursday, the 18th of July at the TIA Summit. So whoever can make it there will be a great opportunity to see the live launch, when we also connect to other cities around the world, like again to Zurich and Geneva and maybe even some other places. We would also like to motivate all of you to look into the opportunity of participating yourselves in the Climate City Cup. How can you contribute? What would you like to do to make your environment profit from these activities? And how can you actually motivate other people to join the Climate City Cup over the coming 4 months? Fatime, who is leading the Climate City Cup as part of the Climate City Cup team here at ETH Zurich, she will give you a deeper introduction to the Climate City Cup later on. And then in the workshops, you're also going to hear a bit more about the disciplines. Just to show you one little device that we prototyped here together with our friends in Geneva. This is an air quality measurement device. We have here the Sensorion sensor that is measuring the PM 2.5 data about particles in the air. We have some communication tools attached to it, and we have here the motherboard. We can connect this here to the battery, and then you see the green and red lights. Now it's active and it's transmitting data directly to the servers. And from this data then we can afterwards create a mapping of different places around the world, and we will also try to figure out how much can these places improve over the 4-month period? How can we make sure that air quality is getting better over this time? So much from my side. I'm really excited that we're ready to start the Climate City Cup. I would like to give the words to Professor Helbing. Professor Helbing is the mastermind behind the original Climate City Cup idea, and he will definitely give you the bigger picture about where does it all come from and what do we have to do to make this planet a better place for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stefan. Thank you, India. Hello, world. We have to solve our existential problems, and we should be doing that together. Climate change is worrying many countries, and also Europe. So, for example, along the coastlines, we expect water rises, and that also has, of course, implications for human settlements. And actually, just a few days ago, we read this news. This is a wake-up call. There are first Britons that have to leave their village because of climate change, it says. And of course, these kind of things are happening around the world, and it causes also mass migration, and with this, other political problems. And so we have really to solve our existential issues, and the biggest one is actually lack of sustainability. So we are basically overusing the world's sustainable and renewable resources, and that has really fundamental implications potentially for the future of this planet, of our economy and the world population. And for that very reason, in order to mitigate that future scenario, the United Nations came up with the Sustainable Development Goals within the Agenda 2030. These are 17 goals for sustainability and about 170 targets that we are supposed to reach by 2030. That is a little more than 10 years from now. The question is, how should we ever be able to achieve these goals within that very short time period? And classically, of course, we rely on global cooperations and international trade. So basically, corporations would identify possible solutions and then roll them out globally. And the question is, would that actually be sufficient in order to solve the world's problems? It turns out, however, that it's not looking good. Actually, in the past 50 years, since we know that we would have these sustainability issues on this planet, lack of sustainability has actually considerably increased, and also energy consumptions around the world and even per capita. And so no wonder young people are getting angry about the situation the world has been maneuvered into, and that there has been so little progress in terms of mitigating climate change so far. Then also classically, there is another pillar, which is nation states and the United Nations, which of course are trying to work out a plan in order to mitigate the situation, with many meetings around the world to coordinate activities, and also a lot of laws and regulations that are being implemented. But it turns out it's not so easy, actually. Like Emmanuel Macron, the French Prime Minister, has tried to implement a climate tax, and that triggered the Yellow Vest movement, and there is a lot of opposition now on the streets because people worry not only about the end of the world, but also about the end of the month. So a lot of the poorer echelons of the French society would have to pay more money, and that has actually caused that opposition, and Emmanuel Macron had to pull back from that original plan. Now, what else can we do? Will big data and artificial intelligence save the world? And at least there is this attempt, and we know that basically secret services are collecting a hell lot of data about every one of us. Already back in 2013, CIA Director Gus Hunt said, we are a walking sensor platform, and it's really very nearly within our grasp, I mean CIA's grasp, to be able to compute on all human-generated information. And we know since the revelations of Edward Snowden that data from many companies have been aggregated by secret services, and that today we have a very detailed profile of everyone's personality, so-called digital double. We have been profiled. And that's not the only thing. Also, we are being judged. For example, there's this British Karma police program that, based on surveillance data, would give certain scores to people for their behavior. And that includes also what you watch on the internet, and the movies that you watch, the music that you hear. And so this is really something that people get very worried about, in particular as some people say human behavior is not appropriate, humans are misbehaving, and that needs to be corrected. And for this, basically, new digital tools have been developed, such as the citizen score. It's currently being tested, for example, in several cities of China, and is planned to be rolled out by the end of 2020. That means next year. But from the point of view of many people, that basically implements a digital totalitarian state. And not only this, the digital revolution that was supposed to solve the world's problems is coming with a rapidly increasing energy consumption, and by 2030, more than 20% of electricity would be consumed by digital technology, and that means this technology seems to be adding to the problems, not only to the solutions. And so maybe we need to take an entirely different route. As Albert Einstein said, we cannot solve our problems with the same kind of thinking that created them. And we have to realize that we're living in a complex world, and that complex systems have particular features. It's certainly true that with new technology, we've been moving from a time where we didn't have enough data to take good decisions into a big data age where evidence-based decision-making is possible. And we know that processing power is increasing exponentially, doubling every about 18 months. Data volume even faster, doubling every 12 months, which means that within just 1 year, we are producing as much data as in all the years of human history before. Data volume will be doubling with the Internet of Things within 12 hours. That's the expectation. And as a result, we cannot even process all the data that's being produced. So there's dark data, and we need to decide what percentage of data to process, which data, and how to process it. That means we cannot fully automate that. It needs science, data science, in order to really extract the value from these masses of data. But we are also networking the world, and as a result, there is a combinatorial increase of complexity, and that grows even faster than exponential. And paradoxically, even though we have the best technology ever and more data than we ever had in the history of humanity, it seems like we're losing control as we're trying to control the world in a top-down way, and we need a new control paradigm, which is distributed control. And I will give you some examples. So we should be heading towards a culture of empowerment and coordination. Classically, throughout Europe, for example, we have been coordinating traffic flows with a lot of laws and regulations. You can see those signs over here. And on the other hand, we observe that in principle, if we have suitable designs, then self-organization can work out very nicely. Here, for example, we have unidirectional flows in the front and in the back, and a buffer in between that allows every traffic participant to adjust the speed in such a way that they would find a gap in the flow. And it all works without traffic lights and policemen very well. Now, how can we use digital technology basically to transfer this principle to the modern days and to the future? Well, surely we can use the Internet of Things, and I personally believe that 300 years after Adam Smith has talked about this principle of the invisible hand, we can finally make it work. And actually through real-time measurement and real-time feedback. We've been working on some examples, and I'm just mentioning one, which is city traffic. We've been working on a self-organized traffic light control, which is adaptive to special events, to accidents and other situations, and it can self-organize beautiful green waves. By the way, not only in such a nicely regular Manhattan street network, but also in very complicated and very irregular networks. There it even works better. And here is an example of one of the cities that we have been looking into, and you can see that with this bottom-up self-organization where traffic flows are actually controlling traffic lights rather than the other way around, we are able to reduce travel times a lot for public transport, also for motorized traffic and for pedestrian and cyclists. And the nicest thing about it is it's also good for the environment. So it's saving CO2 quite considerably. Now the question is, can we scale up this principle to the entire globe? And so let's look into what we needed to do in order to create a resilient society around this planet. Now when we talk about resilience, we mean a system should be able to recover from unexpected developments or shocks or disasters as quickly as possible. And there are some things that can actually support resilience, and this is diversity, this is modular design, this is distributed control. And for that reason, cities and regions are relevant organizational units for a resilient society. And that brings us actually to pillar 3. That means countering global problems in a bottom-up way with city Olympics for better climate, energy, sustainability, resilience, and peace. So basically, cities would engage in solving global problems. It would be different disciplines, like saving energy, improving resilience, and so on. And the idea is basically to activate all the stakeholders. That means scientists, that means citizens, that means the media, politics, business, and basically have every city try to make an effort to become, for example, more sustainable within a couple of months, and to do that in a competitive way where, of course, we would have different classes of cities, like mega cities and small cities and villages and so on, so there would be a fair competition. And the idea is basically to activate collective intelligence, which is based on the principle that the combination of good ideas wins, not the best. And that applies actually to all complex problems. So with City Olympics, we want to fix the world together. And there is this element of competition on the one hand, because competition naturally raises everyone's effort, but we want to combine that also with cooperation. So basically, there are two phases, the competitive and the cooperative phase. In the competitive phase, each city would try to come up with new innovative solutions and also with the implementation of energy saving technologies and so on. So citizens would buy environmental friendly technology and apply it more, and all these kind of things would be measured. And then the solutions that come out of this would be open source and Creative Commons. That means every city could take any of the solutions that would have been developed in any city around the world participating in this Climate City Olympics. And so those solutions can be used, they can be combined, they can be developed further. Also, businesses would benefit from this a lot. And this is how we would combine the best solutions around the world to make progress together. So basically, I'm advertising a new approach towards globalization, which I call localization. It means to think global, to act local and diverse, to experiment, to learn from each other, and to help each other. And that entire approach is based on the concept of open innovation, which means, for example, hackathons, fab labs, makerspaces, and citizen science. So, not sure how many of you have participated already in hackathons. I should say this is a very impressive experience. How many great ideas are being developed in just 1 or 2 days and demonstrated. We've done that many times. We have come up with this blockchain and Internet of Things summer school. We were part of FuturICT at Davos and Hack for Climate. And we're collaborating with fab labs such as this one in Amsterdam, which is a 400-year-old building which played an important role in the history of that city. And in particular, they made experiments at that time that allowed them to learn, for example, about the human body and how it works, right? This is a very famous painting. So the idea was to look inside in order to understand how it works. And this is the spirit that they still have today, when they're basically using digital technology to measure the city and to spread the knowledge how to do this. Not everyone can actually do that, for example, using 3D printers and other technology that is affordable in order to build new solutions. They have been establishing a LoRaWAN communication network for the Internet of Things, and they have even invented the Fairphone, which is a smartphone which can be opened up. You can repair it, you can upgrade it. It's environmental friendly. So this is what this Fab Lab actually came up with, and I find it very impressive. So that has been extremely inspiring to us. And we've been thinking about ways how we could all contribute to measuring sustainability in a city and contributing to it. And one of the results was this Sensorian sensor that Stefan has already shown you before. Here you see Emmanuel, one of our partners from Geneva. And overall, the motivation is that only 1% of all things have been invented, says Sebastian True, and that's the guy who worked at Google X and came up with self-driving cars. Here's another example. George Hotz, a hacker, built his own self-driving car. You know, it's not as difficult as one would think. So citizens can actually come up with pretty impressive solutions, and they could also come up with energy-friendly mobility. So these are typical student projects that are being done, for example, at ETH Zurich. So university students can do such a thing. Just coming back from Berlin, there you see suddenly all these bikes, also e-bikes and scooters. And actually, I'm not sure you have ever tried it, but it's pretty fun. And of course, there are other solutions also that citizens can, in principle, invent, at least the early stages. And so cities actually would be powerhouses of innovation, potentially, if we operate them in an appropriate way. Here is one example how a big progress can be made in some areas of the world. There's 1 billion people using kerosene actually for lighting. This is bad for the environment, it's bad for health, and it can be replaced by such a solar cell powered light, which just costs $9. So with $9 billion basically you can solve this problem and come up with a much more energy friendly solution. We might be even able to detect and find new energy sources and energy production sources. Actually, the universe is full of energy, just we need to learn to extract it from there. But anyway, even we would have to work with the limited energy resources that we currently can access. Then it's also a matter of fairness. I'm showing you here a thesis that has been worked out by Rosima Shinde, an Indian student at TU Delft. I had the pleasure of co-supervising. And all of these approaches actually have motivated the United States to say we want to be a nation of makers, because it's really powerful. For example, OpenStreetMap is run by 1 million citizens around the world who are feeding in data every day into this system to keep this database up to date. And we could do a similar thing to map cities in the world in 3D based on photographs that people take. And we could actually upgrade smart cities with collective intelligence. That is something that is very interesting for us and my team. We could also go the route towards open source urbanism. That means empowering people to contribute to their own quarters where they're living, basically on the basis of principles that Wikipedia is based on, or Creative Commons or GitHub. Now there's open source hardware, open source architecture, and so the principles here are openness, collaboration, modularity, granularity, and low-cost integration, and has been applied with great success in different cities. And then, of course, in the digital age, we could think of digital assistants. That means tools that would empower people. So, question is, what's going on here? Well, basically, we've just been presented a digital assistant that one of our students, an Indian student, has developed in the past months. And you can see the functionality over here. So there's an evaluation of his daily activities, and you can see that he wanted to change his pattern of activities over time, and he has been very successful doing so through the feedback that the digital assistant has given to him. And here is the guy, it's Yukdeep, and we're very proud that we can collaborate with him. So the approach is to empower people, to use the Internet of Things in our pocket, basically to create new open data and new opportunities for all, to support combinatorial innovation and eventually grow an information innovation ecosystem. And such things can be applied to health. For example, we've been working on tools to give people useful feedback on the spread of the flu in a privacy protective way. We've been working on a tool for a more responsible consumption where people can say, I find environmental protection that and that important. I find socially friendly production so and so important. And so this product finder would show them the products that fit their personal values, and it helped actually to make these people consume in a more sustainable way. You could go a step further and could create digital assistance for disaster response. It means for participatory resilience. So this is one of the survival kits that Switzerland is famous for, and the moral survival kit could be this. I mean, our smartphones, if we just had the right kind of software in it, maybe even artificial intelligence helping us in difficult situations, such as after an earthquake, right? Or even detecting an earthquake in the first place using accelerometers in the smartphones to warn our friends and get into a safe space before it's too late. But smartphones could also help us to organize ourselves, I mean, help ourselves and each other in these kind of situations. And so we had a hackathon in San Francisco some years back, and it was very impressive what people came up with, which was tools basically to map the damage of the disaster, to make this knowledge available to the neighborhood and also to first aid forces. Then there were approaches to have autonomous charging stations and helping hands that would basically support people in helping each other to provide resources and also help and match people with each other. And I'd like to mention also one of the theses that one of our Indian students is working on, an energy resilient self-organized communication network that basically would stay alive for 72 hours, I mean the first 3 days after a disaster strikes, in order to allow people really to survive this critical time period until the government is ready to help. Those platforms could also have ad hoc decentralized communication functionality, as we're actually working on, and also decentralized market, so basically people could trade and help each other, as I said before. But how to get sustainable? And here we're working on a platform we call Finance 4.0 or Fin Plus. That's a socio-ecological finance system for participatory sustainability. So again, imagine we would use our smartphones and other sensors like the Sensorian sensors to map noise and CO2 and pollution and other externalities, actually also resources like plastic and glass and so on, and positive things as well like education, health, new jobs and so on. And we would, on the other hand, connect these measurements with a multidimensional incentive and feedback system, which can, for example, be implemented through blockchain technology, but doesn't have to. In any case, the idea is to create a multidimensional real-time feedback to enable coordination in complex systems. I mean, to introduce new forces into the market that would basically create a circular economy through a co-evolutionary process, because everyone would be incentivized to move a little bit into this direction. And so this system would eventually grow into a circular economy by self-organization, by the interaction of the many players, and the sharing economy, of course, would be an important part of this. Now, we have been working on this already for some time with our students. You can see a lot of excited students over here. Done that in our hackathons, in our blockchain courses, and one of the applications that we've built is basically incentivizing to water plants. But you could also think of planting trees. Anyway, so now we're getting to the point where this is going to be put in action. So all of this started with a workshop in Vienna at the Complexity Science Hub, where the first concepts were worked out, and then we were looking for partners such as the Clay and the Climathon, a format that the Climate Kick has developed. And in the meantime, we have quite a few sponsors and network partners and supporting partners, and thanks to everyone, because this is extremely exciting. I think we can make a lot of progress together with a format such as the Climate City Cup that's now being launched in 2 days from now, we can really win together, and we should scale it up globally, because the success principles in the future, in a complex world, would be co-learning, learning from each other, co-creation, co-ordination, cooperation, and co-evolution. And maybe besides the different disciplines that Fatime is going to talk about, the competitive disciplines of our first Climate City Cup, would start in several cities of India and some cities in Switzerland. We could think maybe of an additional discipline that came up basically just a few days ago with an ETH study that said actually the best and maybe cheapest and most efficient way to save the climate is to plant 1 trillion trees. And so, kind of inspired by a quote of Martin Luther, who said, if I knew the world would end tomorrow, I would plant an apple tree today. We should maybe saying, knowing that the world might face disaster by 2030 or 2050 if we wouldn't do anything, we should plant 1 trillion trees as quickly as we can. And actually, cities could look very differently from what they're looking today. This could be the cities of the future. And actually, I've just recently planted 3 trees, and maybe you want to do this too. Thank you very, very much. We're proud that we can launch this first Climate City Cup together, and India is kind of the role model for the world over here. So I'm very much looking forward to the outcome of this.
Perfect. Thank you very much to Dirk. If I look in the faces here, everybody looked really interested throughout the presentation, and it definitely was a great insight into the topic. If anybody has a question to Professor Helbing or to Stefan Klauser, you can ask it now, and I will probably have to repeat it because I think they can't hear you from that far away, but please go on if you have a question. Yes, please.
Yeah. I wanted to ask this question about the data which you are saying. See, we are doing a lot of work on the data, using this data for public transport optimization. One of the problems which we are facing is that one, the data availability, especially from the, let's say for cellular data, if it is available, it's very, very costly. So how you are actually able to partner with the cellular operators or the other stakeholders to get this data. The second is the cleaning of the data actually, because data is so huge that it really requires a lot of, lot of work is required to clean the data and come to that particular. So how you are able to resolve that and make the data more useful in your study?
I personally...
Do you understand the question at all?
Yeah, the acoustics was not very good, but thank you very much for this important question. I do think that we need to find ways to really make more out of the data that is available and that we can actually collect together. But what we need for this, I believe, is a platform for informational self-determination. So everyone would be able to control the use of their own personal data, but they could open it up to companies and institutions, and I'm sure a lot of people would do that with a lot of their data, not all of their data, of course, and this would allow these institutions, also scientific institutions, but also NGOs, for example, and companies, to create new value with this kind of data, and in this way address some of the problems that couldn't be addressed without the data. You want to add something? For the city traffic data, yeah, that's kind of a difficult issue to get access to this kind of data. Usually what is needed to build partnerships. But the necessity to create these partnerships is there because the digital revolution is happening at an extreme speed. And if companies and institutions are not making good use of their data, basically, there is a big chance that basically they will be driven out of the market very quickly. So partnering up between business and NGOs, scientific institutions, I think is more important than ever for success.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation. My question is, data is very techy. An average person on the street who is implementing it doesn't follow. So how do you integrate that the human interaction? What people need is what is gathered rather than a high-tech application which is gathering information that may not be humanly interactive. So how do you involve human factor into this?
I think the Fab Labs and maker spaces are actually a good environment. Also the hackathons where civilians basically are spending some time on learning how to create data and how to process data and what can be done with this. Are people who are very much interested in seeing what they can do by themselves, and they're teaching each other how to do that. And I've shown a few examples that demonstrate how impressive the outcomes can actually be. I think it's very important to support such kind of initiatives. This kind of maker spaces should basically be located in every quarter of town and should be open innovation spaces where people help each other to progress their knowledge about the use of digital technology. But not everyone would need to be able to hack in order to contribute to a better future. Think of Wikipedia, for example, right? There's maybe 1% of people contributing articles, and about 100% almost of people is probably using Wikipedia as an information source. And I think it would also be this way, that some people would be actively driving this forward, and through open source, people can learn from each other very quickly and make quick progress. But others would just use these kind of tools, and that would be, in many cases, good enough to make good progress, I would think. So, to measure data, you don't have to do much, rather than agreeing that you're willing to share some of the data measured through certain kind of sensors to be shared with other people. And then that data is very useful to get an overview of what happens in the city, where are the problem areas, and how to improve the situation. So you can learn from other parts of the cities that have come up with better solutions, and in this way, basically, the co-learning sets in. Also, if people would start buying energy-friendly devices, it doesn't take much to do this, rather than awareness, then also that would make a big progress.
So with that Climate City Cup, it's really important that we don't focus on data in the first place when we try to include citizens. Really, it's about the citizens that want to take individual and collective action and directly feel the benefits of taking this action in their city by having a better environment to live in. And data is more like a very useful side product that we use for rankings and showing like how much were cities able to achieve over a certain period. If you like to learn more about the data, then you could, for example, apply for getting one of our air quality sensors people that get an air quality sensor, they can also download a little application that is then showing the actual measurement data to them, so they can get a better feeling and idea of what does PM 2.5 data mean, how does it look, how often is it measured, how can I actually make sense of that. And then also the data is fed to the Mapunity platform and visualized in a way so that people can more easily relate to the data that comes from their city and also see what does that mean actually for us, and how can we make that better in our certain or respective city.
Perfect. Thank you very much. All right, so we will come to the second keynote of tonight. First of all, thank you again to Zurich. Greatly appreciated your time and your inputs over here.
Thank you very much.
Much success.